Hey, I'm Joe, founder of Rev Pilots. This is a crash course for intro to B2B sales. It's really good for people who have no sales experience. If you have a lot of sales experience, you might find one or two things interesting. But if you have no sales experience, this is going to be a crash course. And I don't have any idea how long this is going to take, maybe 20 to 45 minutes to get you a really good foundation. I've done this for different VC accelerators, I've done it for Techstars, I've done it for Antler, I've done it for a few others. I've helped founders get up to speed fairly quickly with B2B sales. I think it's pretty easy if you're a founder and you're really passionate about what you're building to learn enough about sales, and we'll get into everything. This covers everything from how to get customers, how to manage the sales process, and even the tools and mindset you need. So let's jump into it. So this is Intro to B2B Sales for non-sales founders, and I'm the founder of a company called Rev Pilots. So a little bit about me. I have just about 13 years of early stage startup experience. I've been the first sales hire a few times, first sales leader. I've had my own startups. I've been in the SaaS industry. I've been in the marketplace industry. I've been in the professional services space. I've sold to SMBs, mid-market companies, and some of the biggest companies in the world, Fortune 500 companies. I've done the small sales cycle where it's pretty transactional, but I've done mostly like mid-market and larger sales. Right now, I'm the current founder of a company called Rev Pilots. Like you, I'm a startup founder. I'm still figuring things out. It's going well. I've been doing this for almost 2 years now for the current company. And then previously, I ran a SaaS product that was bootstrapped with a co-founder called Cheat IQ and sold that for a minuscule, tiny amount. Would have made more money working at McDonald's, but learned a lot as being a B2B founder, selling to all different types of companies. First thing I want you to know is, what is sales? A lot of people have a bad impression of sales. If you tweet about sales on things like Twitter, you'll probably get bullied or made fun of. A lot of times people think of that used car salesman. It's not that at all. I want you to reframe your thinking around sales. The first thing you have to remember is sales helps companies solve problems. So your job is to help them find the pain, understand the pain, solve the problem. And then your overarching process with helping them in sales is to help them make a decision. And you can do that in a lot of different ways. You're not the used car salesman. When you sell to companies, you're not going to be able to trick them or use any type of kind of psychological hacks to get a sale across. They're just too sophisticated. You need to reshape your thinking and think about that you're more of a consultant, that you're going into a company, you're going to help them identify the problem, help them understand the problem, the impact of the problem, and help them decide where they are now and then how your solution fits in that to help them go where they want to be in the future. You're helping people solve problems. So another way to think of this is like a doctor. So when you go to the doctor, you've probably had good and bad experiences with doctors. The doctor asks you questions. They ask you things about your symptoms. They ask you about your history. They ask you like your pain levels. If you have a knee injury, for instance, they're probably going to run some tests in the office, and then maybe they're going to tell you that you need to go to an MRI based on what they learn and what they uncover around that problem and then from there it progresses. They're not going to be able to just trick you into getting surgery after talking to them for 15 or 20 minutes. They're too sophisticated. You're not going to buy that. There's different options that you have. Maybe you need to have physical therapy. Maybe you just need some ibuprofen, or maybe you need to get an MRI, try physical therapy, and then have surgery. So as a salesperson of a startup or the founder of a startup, you need to be able to go into companies, talk to them at an expert level about the problem. So you do need to be an expert at the problem and then help them understand that problem and help them walk through the process behind the problem, give them insights, educate them on that problem, make them think about where they are right now with the problem and then where they want to go if they actually want to solve the problem. You're not going to have surgery if the problem's not big enough. You may not even go to physical therapy if the problem's not big enough. So it's the same kind of concept there where depending on the size of the problem and how much it actually hurts will depend on kind of the action they take. And then you also have to figure out how your product or solution or service is going to help them go from pain to pain-free, and you bridge that gap. Something else you need to know about being a founder. Founders must sell. I run a company that helps companies get fractional sales talent. Unfortunately, if you're a founder and you've never sold your product and you don't have a repeatable process right now, we can't work with you. You cannot outsource sales in the beginning. I cannot emphasize this enough. There are so many technical founders who just want to focus on the product. They just want to build, and they want to hire some guy who's worked in sales for 5 to 10 years, who's going to take over sales. It never works. And there's a few reasons for that. And first, you're going to learn too much. As a founder, you have an idea early on of what your solution is going to be. Most likely that solution is going to change. And the only way you can figure that out is if you go out and talk to customers. And you've probably heard this from other VCs and accelerators, like you got to talk to customers. Unfortunately, you do. You have to go out there and you have to sell. There does become a point where maybe sales isn't your number one responsibility, but as a founder who wants to have a successful company, you are going to have to sell. And you'll be selling all the way until if you IPO, you'll be selling. There's stories that I know of salespeople who work at companies that went public where the CEO still joins them on big opportunities. Another reason is you're going to get product feedback. So as good of a salesperson might be, and they might be great at sales, they're not able to take that information and those insights from customers and translate that back to you for product improvements or getting rid of features that might not be relevant or building a specific integration. You're not going to be able to outsource that. You need to go out and talk to customers. You have to get on the phone. You have to go to their office. You have to hop on Zoom meetings and you have to actively sell. Another thing is you're going to learn who the customer is. Right now, you probably have a hypothesis about who your customer is. It may or may not be right. Most likely you're directionally correct, but you're probably going to have to shift. As an aside, oftentimes it's not the product that's the issue. It's your go-to-market strategy. So maybe you're selling to the wrong type of marketing teams. Maybe you need to go down market a little bit, or maybe you need to focus on a specific segment of the marketing industry. Maybe it's D2C marketers in the e-commerce space versus marketers at B2B SaaS companies. Who knows? The other thing is all these kind of nuggets that you pick up and insights that you pick up, they're not going to work in the head of a salesperson. It just doesn't apply the same way as if a founder goes out there, they talk to customers, they learn what works, what doesn't, and then you're going to get that information and you're going to build a better. At the end of the day, the reason why you do sales early on is to validate the product path that you're going on. And when you understand what people really like and what they want, you're going to build a better product. Also, just keep in mind, if you don't agree with me, I can just tell you it's going to be a waste of money. Hiring salespeople early on when you don't have anything close to product market fit and you're still working on the product is going to be just a huge expense that you don't need to incur. You're going to lose too many insights. That's really important. Right now, you got to get that feedback loop going. And really, you'll never understand what to build at this stage if you don't talk to customers. And I'll tell you how to get meetings in a little bit so you can talk to customers, but you really need to go out and talk to customers. Now, you're probably wondering, is there anything you can get help with? So you can get sales coaching. There's tons of people who can help you with that. We can help you with that. I would recommend that you first try it on your own to figure out where you're strong. But if you're able to build pipeline and you feel like the issue is not actually a product issue right now, you're struggling with discovery, you're struggling with demos, you can get some sales coaching. You can also get some help with outbound, being specifically like an SDR who can go out and book meetings for you. The founder still needs to do that first. The best companies don't outsource sales at any stage. The founder gets on the phone, they make cold calls, they send cold emails. If you figured out kind of the playbook for building that, then you can hire someone on a fractional basis with a company like ours, or you can hire someone full-time as an SDR who just focuses on getting meetings on your calendar. You're going to need to have some extra cash for that because it's not that cheap. So another thing is sales isn't hard. You can learn it. You do not have to be an expert seller. You will probably never be the President's Club award winner at a company like Salesforce or Oracle, but you will be good enough to close deals with companies. But you do need to be an expert. So you need to be an expert in your space. You should know more about this problem than anyone else. You should have insights around this problem. When customers talk to you, they should feel like they're getting so much value and understanding about the problem that you're solving that they would pay you for your time. And the only way you can do that is if, one, you're probably passionate about the problem. Two, you've done a lot of research on the problem and you've talked to other customers. And three, exactly who you should be targeting that's going to be interested in solving this problem. And the reason why you don't have to be that great at sales is because you're going to get that credibility and trust through being able to talk about the problem, like that doctor, that consultant that we mentioned earlier, that comes in and helps companies understand the problem that they have, the impact it has on each of their roles in the company and how it prevents them from hitting their goals in the future. And then how your solution fits into that. So you have your current state where they have that problem, and then they have that future state. One thing that's really important to remember is companies have thousands of problems. There's so many different problems that companies have that you could come up with a ton of different solutions. Companies aren't going to buy solutions to every single one of those problems. They're only going to buy solutions to problems that are a priority to solve. So I want to repeat that. companies only buy solutions to problems that are a priority to solve. What that means is that's going to be one of the problems that are at the top of their list. And good salespeople can educate them to move the problem up on the list. But also, they might have been trying alternative solutions. And that's something we'll get into in a bit. Are they looking to actively solve this problem? If they're looking to actively solve this problem and the solutions that are available are not sufficient, you're in a really good spot. And so just so you know, you only have to be good enough. You just have to get to the 101 level because all your credibility and trust comes through understanding the problem. And also you're an expert in the space. You're going to know more about this problem than anyone else. So this is getting more into the actionable stuff that's going to be interesting for you. So we're going to give you a basic outline of how sales works. Every sales cycle and sales process is different. It's going to vary depending on the size of the company that you're selling to, what kind of solution you have, if it's a software product, if it's professional services, if it's something else, if it's both. Don't worry about too much of this. This is just the basic outline of how sales works. So you have your prospects, you have your lead list. Okay. You contact those prospects. Maybe it's, we'll say, the VP of marketing at a Series A SaaS company. You book a meeting with them. You have your first call, right? It's your discovery call where you ask questions. You get an understanding of the problem. You want to see if there's mutual alignment, mutual qualification here. Are they a fit for you? Are you a fit for them? And then the sales cycle progresses. Maybe after that first call, you then go to a demo call where you demo the product with other people on the team, and then you sign the customer and then it repeats. That's the basic idea. You can think of it as a funnel, just so we have an understanding of being on the same page here for some of the other stuff that we're going to go into. Next, we want to look at the different types of customer segments. So you have three main ones for this. So you have the SMB companies, you have the mid-market companies, and then you have the enterprise companies. For most startups, you should not focus on the enterprise companies. Now, I know you probably have investors or you want really cool logos on your website that are going to impress future customers. Unless you have an enterprise specific solution, you probably most likely want to avoid the biggest companies in the world. Everyone wants to sign Nike, Apple, etc. The challenge is those companies are not great for early stage startups. And the reason for that is pretty simple. They're just really long feedback loops. And what I mean by that is it could take you, depending on what you sell, anywhere from 6 months to over a year to really complete the sales cycle to know if they're going to move forward with the product. At your stage, you need to get feedback as quickly as possible. So if you target smaller companies, you're going to get that feedback much more quickly. Now, the exception is you're building an enterprise focused solution and you're confident that only enterprise companies can buy that. There are startups that exist that sell only to enterprise out of the gate, but most companies start SMB mid-market and they move up. Another thing to keep in mind is that it's a much harder sale selling to enterprise companies. There's a lot more people involved in the sales process. So you can go mid-market, you can go smaller, and these are still going to be sizable companies. You're going to get much quicker feedback. You're going to also have an easier time. It's easier to sell to a 100-person company than it is to sell to a 1,000-person company. A 100-person company might have 2 or 3 people involved in the decision. A 1,000-person company could have a dozen plus people, multiple departments. Who knows? There's also going to be things like payment terms, which could be like net 90. You're going to get a bunch of legal paperwork for sure. It's going to be a headache. Whereas if you sell to the companies in the kind of 100 to 500 employee space, which is tons of companies, you're probably going to have a little less competition. You can find those companies that are somewhere in the Midwest that are not on everyone's top of mind, that they've never heard of, that make, $25 million a year. They might have the problem that you're solving. And that's going to be a much easier sales process for you. So go for the easier ones. And then the other thing that I said earlier, feedback loop. As I mentioned on one of the previous slides, your goal is to get feedback from the market early on as a founder doing sales. You want to know, is this the right customer? Do people give a shit about what we're building? Is this problem a priority? And then if not, why isn't it a priority? Do they not understand the impact of the problem? That goes into sales. Or do they have a solution in place that, it's good enough. They're not going to switch because switching costs are too high. And then just going into the kind of 3 segments here, as you can see, SMB tends to be like 1 to 99 employees. It's going to vary depending on who you talk to. Mid-market is 100 to about 1,000, and the enterprise tends to be 1,000 plus. Some people do it by revenue. It's going to be hard to know what is the revenue for SMBs in mid-market, but just something to keep in mind. You should probably be focusing on those first 2 segments out of the gate. Don't try to go for the biggest companies in the world unless for sure that's where you think. The smaller ones, better feedback, easier sales process, quicker decisions, probably a little bit less competition. but really it's about time and speed for you and feedback loops. Some questions you need to answer. If you don't know the answers to these questions, you've got some customer research. So what problem do you solve? Can you specifically state the problem that you're solving? If you can't, maybe you have different ideas of the problem, just do some more customer research. Talk to people who might have the problem. Who has this problem? You have to keep in mind now, when you say like a marketing department struggles with X, that X impacts people differently. The person who's low on the totem pole might be the most affected by that. But the person who actually makes the decision might be the CMO might not care. They might not give a shit. X has to spend an extra few hours per week manually doing a task when it could be automated. But maybe their manager knows that if the person who's below them, we'll say them, the marketing coordinator, if the marketing coordinator could spend less time on this, they could do other things. And the marketing manager has certain KPIs that they need to hit, and they can't hit that because the marketing coordinator is spending way too much time on these things. So you have to think about like how these problem affects different people. CMO might be completely unaware, not care. VP of marketing might be aware, but has 4 other problems that are on their list that they need to solve. Marketing manager might care a lot, and they might be able to help you sell that in. Marketing coordinator might be so drained by this problem, but they have no power. They're, 1 or 2 years of experience. They're low man on the totem pole. So think about how the problem impacts everybody. What happens if this goes unsolved? So say you have an accounts receivable startup that uses AI to make accounts receivable automatic. If nothing changes and they don't make a change, and if nothing happens if you solve this problem, then who cares? They're not going to buy it. Companies are too sophisticated. They're going to talk about this. They have a set budget every year. They're not going to just find money to go after a problem that nothing changes if they solve it. No one's going to do charity work for you. So think about what happens if this goes unsolved. Now, if something does happen, if it goes unsolved, like they're going to miss out on X dollars per month, or they're going to waste X hours per month. Think about that. That's a really compelling data point to discuss with companies. Think about how they're currently solving it. Is it a different solution? Okay. Is that solution integrated with 20 other tools? That's going to make your life a lot harder. But is this something that they've tried other things for and they have a contract that's coming up and now they're open to trying something else? Think about the problem. And then also think about what the current solutions miss. You're going to have a competitor of some kind. If you're like, we're building something new, there are no competitors, you're wrong. I can 100% say that you're wrong. Most likely it's Excel. If you have a SaaS product, if it's a professional services thing, it's the way it's always been done. So the status quo is your number one competitor. And that's really important to remember. One thing that a lot of founders don't realize is companies have a lot of inertia. When they have a lot of inertia, it's because this is how they've always been doing things. And it's really challenging to get them to change the way that they've done business. And that's because the status quo is powerful. People are lazy. People don't want to take risks. People don't like change. And so you have to keep in mind that the status quo is your number one competitor. And then more specifically, it's probably like Excel. It's probably some manual process. It's probably some legacy solution. Another thing to think about is, why is your product now relevant? The most obvious, simple example would be something like Zoom. Zoom came out before COVID. They were doing well. It was a good meeting thing. And then suddenly, like when COVID hit and everyone was remote, now Zoom is super, super relevant. Obviously, that's a very simple example, but the idea is there's something that changes. Is it regulation? Is it macro environment? Is it technology improvement? AI is obviously a huge change in the current landscape right now for technology and work, but you have to be a little careful because everyone else is saying this is relevant now because of AI. People don't buy why the product is relevant as far as how the sausage is made, but they need to know something specific. So maybe it's like the models are good enough now, or now we've been able to get the cost down. That's why it's relevant. So you have to think about it like that on a little bit more granular level. How does a new solution work? Is it something that you're doing that's really innovative, or are you just doing the same thing everyone else has been doing and you put a fancy UI on? And then you also have to think about what's gained by using your solution versus the alternatives. For a lot of companies, the risk with an unproven vendor is not worth it unless it's 10x, sometimes 5x better. Is there something that you can do that's more cost effective by quite a bit? Do you save people time? Or do you just have a better way of solving the problem because you know the problem better than anyone else? And you and your small team have built a solution that is a 10x better problem. Like I said, there's alternatives. So Excel's an alternative, the manual process they've always been doing, their legacy solution. Most likely you didn't create anything new. You've created a better version, you think, of something else, but do companies actually believe that your alternative is better? we talked about general things related to sales. Now we're going to talk about tactical, actionable things. First is you got to talk to customers. How do you talk to customers? You got to get meetings. And we'll go into specific detail for each one coming up on how to do that. So first off, you should have done customer research. There's a good book. Everyone's kind of heard about it. It's called the Mom Test. You need to go out and talk to customers and understand kind of what problems they have, where do those problems rank, what does their workflow look like, get an understanding of what they're trying. Have they tried to solve this problem? If they haven't tried to solve this problem, why not? A red flag always for customer research is they say they have a problem, but they've never even attempted to try to solve it. That to me means a problem's not a priority to solve. But you should have done customer research. So have you talked to a bunch of customers? I don't know. If you haven't, go out, send some LinkedIn messages. I could potentially link somewhere to send like a good templated message, but really you need to talk to customers. So if you've talked to customers and you have an idea and you think it's the head of HR for growing startups from Series A to Series B that have at least 10 salespeople, maybe that's who you want to contact. So you have to figure out who these buyer personas are. What is your ideal customer profile? There are certain tools that they use. Maybe you only integrate with HubSpot, right? So you need to make a list of everyone that's going to have that tool. You want to build tier 1 lists and tier 2 lists. So tier 1 lists are like your best possible fit prospects. You've done your research. You know that these people have the problems in their top 5. It's a priority to solve. They've tried alternatives, their job titles, the companies that they're at. And then tier 2 lists are like basic fits. These are more experimental. You have hypotheses around. You want to do outreach to them. So you have multiple ways. You could send LinkedIn messages, you can make cold calls, you could send emails, but you want to think about your lists. So tier 1, you spend more time writing personalized. So when I say personalized, it's going to be personalized and relevant. There's a lot of LinkedIn sales gurus who will spend their whole life writing theses around what's the difference between personalization and relevancy. Relevancy just tends to be related to the problem. It doesn't mean like the school that they went to or if they have a golden retriever. But you want to tailor these messages so they look one-to-one. These aren't your templated generic messages. Spend a little bit of time on your tier 1 list and write good messages. We'll go into how to do that in a little bit. And like I said before, you're probably SMB mid-market focused. If you're enterprise focused, that's going to be a whole nother training. Enterprise is hard. Stay away from enterprise. And then we have a bunch of different methods. You have your network. You have LinkedIn. You have Twitter. Twitter can be really good for certain job titles. There's communities that you can go after. You can work network. And we'll go into everything in a little bit. So cold email is something that you've probably heard of. I can tell you that if you have no coaching or you haven't spent some time trying to learn it, you probably write bad emails. If you write bad emails, that's okay. If you write good emails and you haven't been able to get any traction, that's a much harder problem to solve. So I like cold email because, especially for non-sales founders, because it's for non-sales founders, it's one of the softer rejections, but because it's a softer rejection, that makes the channel more challenging. Cold email is the easiest and most cost-effective way to book meetings. I'll link some tools below where you can get as much data as you need to find the contact information of people who fit your tier 1 and tier 2 lists. So I'm going to go through the cold email best practices. This is something that you need to think about. You might want to screenshot this. I'll make this whole thing available in a link below too, so you can have all this information. So first thing is subject line. Your subject line, just 3 words or less. Don't make it sound marketing. Make it sound, this is my tip, boring and sound like an internal email. So when I say boring and internal email, your goal for the subject line is to just get someone to read the next line, which is going to be the preview sentence, which we'll talk about. But really, it could just be like 2024 sales goals. Or if you sell a marketing problem, like marketing automation issue, just make it sound like it's an internal email. Don't overthink it. Subject lines are probably the most overvalued thing or overrated thing as far as what you need to write. It just cannot be like a marketing one where it's really long, where it has exclamation points or emojis. Don't do it. Another thing to keep in mind, it's a little counterintuitive. Nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about your startup. Nobody cares about that you were in Y Combinator. They care about the problem that you solve. So don't write about yourself. Don't write, hi, I'm Joe Benjamin, the founder of Rev Pilots, and I've come up with a solution to help companies that need to hire fractional sales leaders. That's shit. Don't write that. You want to keep it short. 25 to 50 words is your target. And I know you're probably thinking like, how can I possibly fit everything in 25 to 50 words? You have to. The goal of a cold email is to pique curiosity to get a meeting booked. That's it. You're not trying to sell them. Too many founders think they have to try to sell the product in email. Your goal is to just sell the meeting. So pique their curiosity. You don't have to tell them everything. Less tends to be more. 25 to 50 words is your goal. If for whatever reason you got to go over, don't go past 100. But 25 to 50 is your goal. One thing to keep in mind is when you get an email, so you get an email on your phone, you're going to see the preview. Whether it's Gmail or Outlook, there's always like a little bit of a preview. It varies if it's on desktop or mobile. But you can tell reading that preview if this is a marketing email, some guy selling you some overseas IT bullshit, some garbage SEO service, or someone who's spent some time and you're like, what is this? So that just helps you with your open rate. Think about that first sentence, tailor it in a way that's not going to be obvious that it's a sales email. You also have to, despite what all the sales coaches say, you have to balance quality with quantity. So you can't spend 20 minutes writing emails and expect to see results. It's too easy to send a lot of emails. And so people's inboxes are flooded with cold outreach, which makes it a harder channel to break through it. But you do need to send enough. It's going to depend on who you're targeting, how fast you move, but you have to think about cold email success is two things. It's quality of your message and quantity of your message. So if you can write an A-level message and send enough of them, you're going to have success. But if you write a C-level message and you send a lot of them, you're not going to have success. Whereas if you write an A-level message and you send 2 emails a week, and believe it or not, there are founders who I talk to who are like, we sent 5 emails this week. You're just not going to see enough success. It is a numbers game at some point. Another thing to keep in mind is make the email about them. Touch on their pain. Don't talk about your solution. Talk about their problems. If they have that problem and it resonates with them, they're going to keep reading that email. Maybe they'll look at your email signature. Maybe they'll go to your website. One problem per email. Your product probably solves multiple things, but you can use follow-up emails to touch on those problems. Follow-up emails are key. It's where you're going to probably get your meetings booked. I would say most of my meetings come from my second or third email. I don't think a lot of them hit on the first email. Sometimes we'll get a reply in the first email, send me more information. But for the most part, the meetings are that second follow-up. Don't be afraid to follow up. There's a saying in sales, money is made in a follow-up. It's true. Apples to apples social proof is what you need to use to have success leveraging social proof. So if you're selling to a mid-market company, you want to cite other mid-market companies that use your product. And then if you can go even more granular, so back to the D2C e-commerce example, if there's other D2C e-commerce companies that are in the $5 to $20 million range, you can cite those companies when you're using it for your outreach. But if you are going after, say, the SMB companies and you say, we have this 10,000 company on our roster that uses our product, they're going to think you're overpriced, too much of a solution, and not a fit. So apples to apples social proof. And that would come in the form of saying like companies like X, Y, and Z have been able to solve A and B by using a new solution. Multiple emails over 2 to 3 weeks tends to work well. You test it. There's no kind of secret formula for the number of days between email. Some people say 2, some people say 3, some people mix in cold calling and LinkedIn messages. That's the ideal scenario. We'll talk about that in a bit. But you really have to be persistent. And I know you're going to probably be uncomfortable. If you're very technical, you're probably so against cold outreach. It works, unfortunately. I get a ton of emails per day. The bar is on the floor. It's below. It's so bad. So if you just write good emails, you spend some time, you make an effort, you dedicate 10 to 15 hours per week prospecting, you're going to see results. You also get feedback. And this is really key. If you're sending a lot of emails, they're following the best practices and nobody gives a shit and you're not getting any meetings, there's something wrong with your messaging or nobody cares about this product. So you have to think about it like that. If people start responding positively to you and you're like, I want to learn more, you're on to something. So this is, again, that data feedback. Whereas if you outsource this to someone, you might miss those insights early on, but just something to keep thinking about. Another thing that you need to know is when you write these emails, sometimes you can give something away for free. Maybe you have a really good insight about the problem, or maybe something about the industry that they might not be aware of. So educate them. Not everything has to be an ask for a meeting. One thing I've done in the past is I've led with writing an email where I would look up people on the sales teams. For Cheat IQ, we had a tool that helped with enterprise sales research. And so I would go on LinkedIn and I would find 3 people on the sales team. And then I would email the VP of sales, who was like VP of enterprise sales. And I would say, like, hey, are Bill, Steve, and Susie using 10Ks for enterprise sales research? These are the benefits. I'd send that as email number one. And then email number two. So you can lead with an insight about a topic. You can educate them. You don't have to always have a call to action to try to get a meeting. One thing I would do is when I had a company that helped with enterprise sales research, we would find 3 people on the sales team. So like Bill, Susie, and Steve. And then I would write in the email first line, and this is going back to making it tailored and when that preview, I'd write like sales research, I think, for the subject. And then, hey, the name of the enterprise sales leader, a VP of enterprise sales, are Bill, Steve, and Susie using 10Ks in earnings calls for sales research. And then I'd explain why they're valuable. They can be used for understanding companies' goals, priorities, problems they're looking to solve, et cetera. And then that'd be the email. And then I'd follow up 2 days later and be like, hey, we do a free training. There's no charge or catch to help teams learn more about enterprise or how to use 10Ks and earnings calls in their sales research. Companies like, and then I would list 2 or 3 companies that we've done the trainings for before. They've used them, blah, blah, like worth a chat. And then I'd write like, there's no charge or catch. And believe it or not, a lot of these companies are like, what's the catch? There's no catch. We're just a startup. We want to give back to the market and educate them on this problem. And they would have us come in. We would get offers to get paid to do the trainings. And we would be like, no, this is for our product. But we want to make more money doing enterprise sales training for some big companies. So think about it. Is there anything that you can educate the market on or educate your buyer on that could be a fit for the product around the problem that's related in some way to the problem that you're solving? You can lead with that. Lead with the offer. Give them something. You give them something first, they're going to be much more likely to be responsive to you in a good way. And then if not, no worries. Another thing to keep in mind is write for mobile. Most people, again, open their emails on their phone. I think it's 50 to 60%. If you have to scroll, it's too long. So think about, does it fit on one screen? Another thing is write like you speak. So if you write hope all is well in an email, the saying is like, no email has ever found anyone like you speak. Keep it simple, keep it short. And there's probably some stat out there, like most people read at like a 4th grade level. Don't write big words. Keep it simple. It's going to be much better. Get to the point. And if you can't explain the problem in a simple way, you don't understand the problem. But then there's things like soft calls to action. Back in the day, you just write like, how is 4 p.m. on Tuesday? And then now nobody responds to that kind of thing. You could write like open to learning more, worth a chat. Remember, your goal is to book a meeting. Cold email is your most cost-effective channel. It's probably your easiest from an effort standpoint. The next is cold calling. It's more effective most of the time than cold email. The reason why it's more effective is because it's more effort and people don't like doing it because you get rejected over the phone and it's nerve-wracking for some people. It works. That's the unfortunate thing. It works. And for certain segments, like SMB business owners, if you're selling something to like construction companies or mom and pop businesses, they might not even have a real work email address. It might be like Yahoo or Hotmail. You got to call them. You got to call them early in the morning or towards the end of the day. It works. That's the unfortunate thing. There's really no secret to cold calling. Just like there's no secrets to cold emailing. It's quality of calls times effort times quantity. So you have to pick up the phone. The rule of thumb is if you make 80 calls, you might have 2 to 4 conversations, depending on the quality of your list. Some lists are higher quality. You can pay more money for that, or you'll have more conversations. But really, the rule of thumb, just like baseline for most people, 80 calls, you'll have 4 conversations. Of those 4 conversations, if you're any good, 1 to 2 meetings. 80 calls might take you a while. There's tools that make it faster. Another thing to consider is calling people who open your emails multiple times. There's some kind of different discussion around, does email open tracking actually work? Sometimes if you see tons of opens, I would say it's probably working. But really, cold calling, you have to be disciplined. You have to block off time. There's really no way of getting around this. You can use a tool. There are different tools I can link below that help you make more calls. There's things like parallel dialers and power dialers where they dial 5 to 10 numbers at a time. And then whoever picks up the other ones get dropped and they connect you. They can work. It's a little awkward sometimes because there tends to be like a 1 to 2 second delay. But yeah, cold calling works, unfortunately. And you'll probably have good traction with cold calling across SMB, mid-market, and enterprise companies. LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, I hate LinkedIn. If I could delete my LinkedIn account, I would delete it today. I don't delete it because it works. LinkedIn is cringe as hell. It's one of the worst social platforms that's ever been created. But for businesses and for founders, you would be an idiot not to use it. Now, the only caveat there is some people's customers might not be on it. Doctors are probably not that active on LinkedIn at all. Mom and pop business owners are probably not that active. But if your buyer is active on any level on LinkedIn, you need to use it. The strategy is simple. So this is a really good example of simple, but not easy. You need to establish yourself as an expert around the problem that you're solving. And the way you do that is you post content every day. There's consultants out there that you'll see on Twitter, on LinkedIn that will sell you a course or will sell you consulting. This is the course. Pay attention if you want to get good at LinkedIn. You post about the topic that you solve a problem for, whatever that is. Post as much as possible. Post 7 days a week. If you can post 2 times a day, go for it. It's much harder than you realize to create content consistently. The other thing is you can add people to your network. So you can almost think about like the LinkedIn feed for other people as like a newsletter. And if VPs of compliance at small banks, small regional banks are your target customer, you should be adding every single one of them on LinkedIn. You do not send them a message. You don't send them like any kind of blur, just add. There's some studies that show that people who write no message when they add someone, they're much more likely to get their connection accepted. The reason why is because every time someone writes a message, and there's a lot of people who write messages, it follows up with a message to you right after in your inbox about trying to sell you something. And so people become really apprehensive to people. So your goal, add these people. And then you can add 100 people per week. There's tools that make it easier for you. You add 100 people per week, and then we'll say 40 of them accept. Now they're going to see from time to time the content that you write about. If it's compliance stuff, write about compliance. If it's mental health, it's mental health. If it's sales tools, write about sales tools. If it's HR related solutions, whatever. If it's developer tools, it's developer tools. Write about the problems, write every single day. You can mix in some funny stuff. If you're funny, you can mix in some expert stuff. If you're an expert, whatever it is. The other thing that you do is you comment on other people's posts that are either in the industry or have similar followers. You want to leverage their large followings. So you can find people, add them or follow them on LinkedIn, and then just leave comments. People who are connected to them will see your comment. Maybe they'll look at your profile. Maybe they'll go to your website. It's not common. You want to make your profile more like a landing page than a resume. Get a good header image in there. Get a good tagline that explains exactly what you do. Make it so if people go to your profile, they're going to get information like they would if they went on a landing page on your website. And so you're posting on a regular basis. That's hard, but if you can do it, then you do giveaways. So you give away like an ebook, a checklist, some sort of guide, free training session for the first 3 people that reply. And then that's going to build you a following, build you credibility. If you dedicate 15 minutes per day to LinkedIn and your buyers are on there, you're going to see results, whether it's in a month or in 6 months. It's very similar to SEO where it starts to compound. But the hardest part by far is doing this on a consistent basis. The people that I've worked with that have done this on a consistent basis, not only have they like helped their company, but they're probably, as bad as it sounds, like LinkedIn, like legitimate LinkedIn experts. So the topics that they write about, because they know it better than anyone else, people come to them and they ask them about that topic. They'll DM them or they'll say, hey, I've seen what you've been posting. Can we learn more about the solution that you're building? I post regularly. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm still figuring out my company. So my content is all over the place a little bit, but I still get messages probably like once a week, once to every 2 weeks, where people want to learn more about what we're building. And I get pipeline because I post on LinkedIn. It takes me, I don't know, I probably spend 20 minutes to an hour a week writing content for LinkedIn and including like comments, and it makes money. Like it's ROI, it's guaranteed. The other thing is you're probably wondering, should I message people? So when you add people, they accept, don't message them, just leave them alone. The worst thing that you can do is add someone who would see your content and then maybe enter into some sort of business venture with you, whether it's like a potential client or someone who's going to be on a podcast or whatever it is. Maybe it's a future employee. Just don't ruin it by messaging them. Just add them to like your newsletter list. That's how you're going to think about it, and let them digest your content over time. That's going to pay dividend. This is a long-term play. So you're not going to see results overnight. Now you're probably wondering, what about messaging people on LinkedIn? I think you can absolutely message people on LinkedIn to try to get meetings. I just find that it works better if you use it more as a content play and a long-term play versus outreach. But go for outreach, try. I think you need to test everything. There's no right or wrong answer here, but you probably need to test direct messaging people 100%. But your strategy for LinkedIn should be more content focused, long-term focused, because this stuff compounds. Another thing to keep in mind is you have a network, right? So there's people in here. If you like, I don't have that good of a network, you do have a network. So you have friends, first of all, you have family, you have people you went to maybe high school with, maybe you went to college with, maybe your grad school programs that you work on. You have your previous coworkers. You need to make a list of everyone. Go on LinkedIn, figure out where they were, and don't be shy. See if there's someone that they can make an introduction to. This is where it gets weird. There's going to be people that maybe you haven't talked to in like years. And if you tell them like, hey man, hope things are going well. It's been a long time since blah, blah, blah. I'm building this new product. I was wondering if I have a huge favor to ask you. Like, I was wondering if like you could give me some insight around this problem at your company. So another thing that you want to do is you want to work your network. So what that means is you have to think about everyone, like your friends, your family, high school acquaintances, college friends, college acquaintances, previous coworkers. Think about everyone, find them on LinkedIn, see where they work, figure out who the contact is that would be on your tier 1 list that you could reach out to. You have to get over being shy and you have to be shameless in the modern economy is a superpower. Ask them for introductions. You have to be delicate with it. You have 2 options. You could just be direct. Be like, hey, Joe, I have a huge favor to ask. Totally understand if this is completely out of line. I'm building a new company. We're solving a really specific problem. We're getting great traction. I was wondering if you had any insight into it at your company, something like that. Or if you could just make an introduction, or you play the long game where you just have a relationship with them. They're good friends. I find that like good friends tend to be less helpful than just like random previous people that I've encountered. I think one thing that will surprise you is the people that will be helpful will not be the people that you expect. Some people naturally, they're risk averse. And this is a good kind of sales tip. They're not going to put their internal company equity on the line to help you out for your unproven startup that nobody's heard of. That's something to really remember. When people are considering buying a product, they're going to think about not only does this solve my problem, but like what personal risk do I have? There's an old saying, if you're young, you're going to be like, why would anyone say that? But if you're older, you're going to know like nobody gets fired from buying from IBM. And the meaning behind that is like, it's an established company, right? Like how could we have gone wrong? We bought from IBM. They've been around forever. They're established. Whereas if you buy from a startup, there's a certain level of risk. And so when you ask people for help or introductions, some people are going to have an appetite for risk. Some people don't care. Some people, their goal is to effectuate change at their company. And you are someone who can help them make that change. So they'll help you out. Just don't make assumptions about who's going to help and who's not. I can tell you working with startups, being in startups, having my own, it's all over the place. Another thing is if you have customers, ask them for referrals. I cannot tell you how many times I've consulted with startups who have a good client roster. And one of the first things I ask them is, hey, like how often do you ask for referrals? And they're like, oh, we've never done that. Okay, you've got 25 customers. They're all happy. No one's churning. They've expanded the size of these accounts. Like go ask them for referrals. Another thing is there's relevant communities. Got to be a little careful with communities. When you go into a community, you can't go in and sell, add value. Like I mentioned before, is there something that you really well that can educate people and just reply to people? Like take a little bit of a medium to long-term approach with communities, and then you'll be surprised at how you'll get business. Sometimes people will just post in the relevant community, who do you recommend for this? Or I'm having trouble with this. If you know how to solve that, but it doesn't necessarily directly lead to your product, that's okay. Offer your time, give some free value back to people where maybe you can walk them through a solution or how you've solved it in the past or make a recommendation to something. You want to take a longer term view of this stuff. If you're actually building a company, this is a long-term thing. So people want to know, hey, that guy's really helpful. You should talk to him. And then ironically, they're going to make referrals to you. I've been in communities where people have asked questions. I posted answers. They look at my profile and then they're DM me and be like, hey, I know so-and-so who asked me for help with a company like yours. Or it will be something like, hey, I need help with this. Can we chat? So think about giving back to people first, giving them value in these communities, and then you'll get it back. Plus there's rules. They're going to ban you if you go in and pitch. Nobody likes it. So let's go over the simplified sales process. So this is like a basic sales process. This is just for educating you. This is not how a normal sales process goes for a majority of companies. It's just for understanding these three kind of main steps that a lot of companies have at some level. I know some people who are watching this be like, this is a dream if my sales process was this. So just go along with it. So we'll call it 3 steps here in our very simple process. We have our intro call. That's where we're doing discovery. It's mutual qualification. Are they a fit? Are we a fit? Do they have the problem? Do they understand the problem? Is this problem impactful? Who's going to buy this? Do they care about this problem, etc.? Try to really understand it. You'll educate them a little bit about the problem. You give some insights. You'll probably discuss your solution high level. And then if they agree, and one thing, this is a really good sales tip, always schedule next steps at the end of calls. Do not be like, hey, I'll pick it up next Tuesday, send you an email. That's how you lose these sales cycles. Then the next is a demo and you go over the product, you walk them through it. And then they're like, okay, let's buy. If it's self-serve, maybe you send them a link on the call. If it's not, then you're going to have a proposal call where you walk them through. We'll go into detail on all these steps. So we'll say for most companies, your intro call is going to be 30 minutes. You're not getting more than 30 minutes. If they only give you 15 minutes, that's going to be tricky. You probably need at least 20. So we'll just talk about the structure. The intro call for you starts before you actually get on the call. You need to do some research. So they've agreed to the call, look them up on LinkedIn, Google their company, see if they've been in the news, look at their LinkedIn profile, see how long they've been in their role, see who else might be on the invite. I had a call on Friday that I thought got canceled, but it was actually only the CEO joined the call. That was unexpected. If I didn't look up who was on the invite, because I didn't even get notified that they got added, I probably would have not joined the call and I wouldn't have been able to talk to the CEO one-on-one of a company that they do 10 million a year ARR. Think about your preparation. You want to prepare. You don't need to spend too much time. 5 to 15 minutes is enough, depending on how good you are at this. The call starts. You're going to have the first couple minutes. You do some bullshit rapport building where you talk about the weather. Don't talk about the weather. Try to talk about something more relevant and interesting. Weather talk, nobody likes. And then you're going to have to transition. You'll get better at it with time about the call. So for some people and a lot of like sales trainers, they're going to tell you, do an upfront contract. And that's just where you're going to give the outline of the call, ask them to agree to that. So you'll say, this is what we're going to do. We'll go over the problems. We'll discuss the solution. And then at the end, if you believe there's a fit here, we'll discuss time for a next step. Personally, my experience with founders is they don't love that. It feels a little too formal. Try it. See what you think. I don't really care either way. I don't do it. It has no effect on my sales process. If you do want it, you can just explain the purpose of the call, tell them what you'll go over, and that you're going to leave time at the end to discuss next steps if there's a fit. They'll say, okay. One thing that I've learned doing sales at early stage startups, and I'm sure there's a sales guru out there who's watching this who's going to hate it, is that one of the good first questions for people who don't have a lot of sales experience is, just out of curiosity, I know you get a ton of requests for meetings like these. What prompted you to take today's call? And the reason why I like that question is they get to the point. If you're going to run like a standard discovery process and try to understand everything about their business that you need to know to move this forward, you're going to beat around the bush. Whereas if you just get to the fucking point, they're going to tell you, oh yeah, your email caught us at the right time. We're looking at solutions in this space. Or your email caught us at the right time. We're looking to solve this problem. We just lost our director of marketing and our marketing manager. We need a solution that takes time off. Just ask, try it, see how it works. If you book the meeting from cold outreach, it's perfect. If it's inbound, just tweak it. Just out of curiosity, I know you're the founder of a Series A startup. You must have a ton on your plate. What prompted you to book a call with me? And then they'll probably just get to the point. Now, there's a whole list of discovery questions. I may put those below. We'll see, or I might do another video on them. Good discovery is more conversational than an interrogation. So you want to think good discovery is more conversational than an interrogation. You want to think of, again, putting on your consultant. People should feel like that conversation that they're having with you about the problem and the insights you have around the problem is something they would have paid money for. If they don't feel like they're learning anything on the call, you don't have enough value for them. People's time is limited. They get probably, like any decision maker, any decent sized company probably gets 10 emails a day at least from salespeople, if not more, probably more, and plus some cold calls and some LinkedIn messages. For them to take a meeting with you, make it worth your time for a couple of reasons. One, it gives you credibility and trust. Two, they're going to be more likely to schedule another call. Three, these companies require other people to come in often to buy. If they don't feel like your stuff, they're not going to bring you into their company and buying process. It goes back to that risk aversion. So make sure that you understand what your problem is. Understand it at a really good level where you're an expert, where if you were to go give a presentation on it, people would sit in that room and they'd be like, that guy or that girl knows exactly what they're talking about. Think about what's the pain that you solve for? How painful is that? Like I said before, companies have tons of problems. If this is not a burning pain that they're looking for a solution for, or you can't educate them enough to where they're now actively thinking that this problem is impactful, you're not going to be able to get anywhere. But you also want to figure out, how are they making buying decisions? What's their timeline? Now, I've had calls with people where they go really well and I'm like, damn, this is going to definitely move forward. And if this doesn't close, I'll be shocked. And then at the end of the call, they're like, yeah, we're thinking about in 6 months picking this. That means I screwed up something from how impactful the problem is. And sometimes companies just have schedules for how they solve problems. There's nothing that you can do. Maybe it's related to a product rollout they're going to do or a fundraise or something like that. They're just getting things in a row. Another thing, usually, I think when you get really good, you should be doing more talking on discovery calls. This is when you're like really good because of the value that you're providing. But early on, you need to ask them questions that get them talking, because if you don't get enough information out from them, you can't understand, is this a problem that we're solving, and then how to align your solution. If you're doing all the talking, like how I'm doing all the talking today, it's not going well. And then another thing to keep in mind is you need a clock watch. So look at the clock, see if you're running up on that 30 minutes. No matter what, you need to try to schedule next steps. So leave time at the end of the call. You can say, based on what we've talked about today, it sounds like you're potentially a really good fit for us to help you solve X. What I recommend, so something that you have to think about is you need to take over the sales process. You would say, what I recommend is we have another call. I'll show you the product and how it can solve for X, Y, and Z. How does next week look for a call? And most of the time, if the call went well, they're going to agree. The second thing that you can do there is you be like, oh, you also mentioned that this problem touches Bill and Susan. Does it make sense to bring them into the call as well? Do you want to send an invite to them, or should I? Pull everyone in, make sure that they can see the product. And then you get it on the calendar, you send a calendar invite, you send a recap email, talk about the problems, the goals, keep it succinct because they might pass it along internally. You have your intro call. Now, the next thing that you have is that demo call. So you've got prospect back on the call. The first thing I like to do is you do your little rapport building. You should have taken really good notes. Use a call recorder. There's a lot of good call recorders. I'll link it below to the ones that I use, or to the one I use. Make sure you have really good notes on them. So again, you prepare 5 to 15 minutes before, and then you get on the call, you can recap the call. One thing I like to ask, and again, there might be like a sales guru or expert who watches this, who says it's wrong, whatever. Ask them, has anything changed since we last spoke? Now, the reason I like that call is, one, usually something's changed between then. Maybe they talked it internally about this, and it's, yeah, you're now in the running for us to evaluate this, or nothing's changed. We're still good to go based on what I told you before. Or, yeah, I talked to Bill and Susan. They weren't able to make it, but we're going to need to make sure we circle this in front of them to make sure they get feedback as well, because they're going to have different questions than me. Oh, and I looked into it. IT needs to be involved because it integrates with 2 other tools that we need this to use. But you can try. If not, don't worry about it. And then here's the thing that's really important to know. Demos, you're not showing everything. You're only showing the parts of the product that are related to the problems that they have. So if your product solves for 10 different things, and it's very possible you can do 10 different things with your product to solve different problems, but they only care about 3 or 4 of those things, you only show them the 3 or 4 things. You don't feature them. So you don't go through the whole product, drag them through a bunch of irrelevant features that they have no interest in. The reason for that is, 1, they're going to think it's overbuilt. 2, they're going to think it's more money than they need to be spending. And 3, if you tell them that these are the features and you just show them the features that are related to their problem, they're going to think this is built for their problem. You can expand later. The other thing is, people aren't going to remember everything. Despite what you think, this is one of maybe 10 to 20 calls they'll have a week or meetings. They're just not going to remember. Don't feature them. Only show them the product features that are relevant. Don't go on long monologues. This thing is now going on almost an hour. Don't do it. You need to have engagement. Show them something, ask them a question, how they think that's going to impact them. How does this compare? There's a whole bunch of different questions that I can come up with for demos. Ask them, how would they use this in their role? How do you see this working with your current workflow? Do you think this would change things? How would that change things? There's different ways to approach doing a really good demo. But the key is discovery. If you have a good first call with them and you really understand what they're trying to solve for, you can connect that to the specific parts of your product. Don't ask, does this make sense? The answer is always yes. Almost nobody's going to tell you, unless you're on a call with Larry David, they're not going to tell you, no, people are shy. So you have now moved along. Things are going great. People are like, this product, we have this problem. It's a burning problem. We've tried alternatives. They don't work. Let's see the product. They go on the demo. Let's move forward. Again, at the end of the demo, schedule next steps. If you're an early stage startup and it makes sense to where you're going to send a contract, do not send the contract by email without walking through the contract with them. The reason for that is feedback. When you send a prospect a proposal, you don't get the insights of their reaction. If you're doing Zoom calls, you're going to see like their physical reaction to pricing. That's going to tell you something. Maybe they don't even flinch, or maybe they're going to be like, lean back and be like, oh shit, this is too much. But you should have discussed pricing before. But regardless, you will get an understanding of kind of that. The other thing is you're going to talk about the buying process. If you haven't already, maybe they have to get approval. Maybe under 10K, they can just use their business credit card, or maybe it's got to go through procurement's hell and they're going to explain to you exactly what you need to do. They're going to send over paperwork. They can't actually use your contract. Who knows? The simpler your proposal is, the better. So try to make it as short as possible. I can tell you from over a decade of experience, the prospects who drag you on pricing are never easy to work with after. There's no prospect who tries to bend over a startup on price that then becomes a great customer. It just doesn't happen. It's a weird thing that I've experienced. I just know for a fact that those companies are not usually going to be your best prospect, but don't over, just something to consider. Another thing is, earlier when I was doing sales as a first hire, I sold to a CEO of a company. They were doing 100 million. He was in charge of some like major initiative. And he promised me if I got the price down, he would make a bunch of introductions to other CEOs that he knew on some monthly group that he was in the same space. And of course, like I went back to the CEO and I was like, hey, he'll do this. Long story short, he didn't do it. People who promise a lot of stuff for future discounts usually are full of shit. Just something to keep in mind. It's a data point. It's something you will probably experience. They see you as a small startup. They go on your LinkedIn profile. They see it's you and a co-founder, or you and just a small team. They try to leverage their size, their logo, their network against you. Hold your ground. And then going back to this, you want to always present pricing and contracts when it makes sense. On a call, don't negotiate via email. If you negotiate via email, you just lose so much information. The phone, schedule a Zoom call. Not only is it going to be better for negotiating, it's just faster. You lose things in email. You'll be waiting for a response. If you just say, hey, you want to talk tomorrow, or you want to hop on a call, or just see in their email signature their phone number, give them a call. Another thing that's not underrated, another thing you need to do that I didn't even discuss, pick up the phone. You'll get an email back from a prospect, just give them a call. I know it's like what boomers, like your boomer parents might do, where you text them and they call you and you're just, I hate that. It's just more effective in the business world. You have to pick up the phone. Just pick up the phone. Pick up the phone. Like when in doubt, pick up the phone. If you sent a follow-up email to someone and they've gone silent, pick up the phone. And then as an aside, try to always get someone's cell phone number and text with them early on. You can do it a couple ways. You can do it on a call. Hey, if things are going really well and you deal with like longer sales cycles, you can always be like, hey, do you mind if I text you some information? Or a really sneaky way is like texting someone via before a call and be like, hey, just wanted to give you a heads up on our demo call today. So these are some things that we're going to definitely go over, and let me know if you have any questions. And you get that channel open. Deals where you're texting with your prospect, especially if you have a champion who's trying to help you sell it internally, those close at a much higher rate. Texting is a very good channel for you with your champion. Another thing is you can use a tool like DocuSign. I'm going to link a better tool that I prefer below. My issue with DocuSign is they always jack their pricing and then you have to change it. Pay attention to payment terms. So if you're a bootstrap startup, especially, cash flow is really important. Some of these companies will start you at like net 90, but if you don't even ask them for something shorter, they're not going to change. They don't care. Some will just never change. That's just the cost of doing business with some of these big companies. But you always should check payment terms, pay attention to that. Obviously, there's legal language you need to be aware of. You got to figure this stuff out on your own. You can't send every contract to a lawyer. Not legal advice, but don't be afraid to ask for concessions or changes on a contract. If someone wants a discount and you feel like that's going to be an area where you'll give them a discount, ask them for something. Be like, hey, If you love this product, do you promise that it doesn't have to be in the contract, but just verbalize it? Will you do a case study or a testimonial or what this goes really? If they ask you for something, some sort of concession or change, just because they're an established business and they've been around for a while, doesn't mean you can't get something out of them. So definitely ask them for something. Case study, testimonial, customer reference calls, referral, whatever it is, ask them. You'd be stupid not to. If you don't ask, you don't get. And then another tip, read Never Split the Difference. It's a book on negotiation. There's some elements there that you can use for sales. It's a good book. It's interesting. Take you a weekend to read. Most people think they're good at negotiation. Most people are terrible. So read Never Split the Difference. Pricing is hard. Don't worry too much about pricing early on if you have it right. Companies are just always struggling with pricing if they know if they're pricing it too high, too low, how they should package things. It's hard. I don't think I've ever talked to a founder who's we've nailed pricing. Just accept that out of the gate. What usually happens is you get anchored to a product. So depending on something that's similar, that's how the buyers will think of your product. If you're good at sales, you'll be able to figure out how to get away from that anchoring if you don't think it makes sense. Something to keep in mind, if you've never been in sales and you've never been on like a team that buys products or is actively involved in like buying things regularly, companies have plenty of money to buy stuff. They buy the stupidest shit. They buy stuff that's wasteful. They spend money on sales kickoffs that are no return on investment. They do it for stupid company events, pointless advertising, expensive trade shows. Get out of your head that companies don't have money. It's probably likely that you're underpricing your product if you've never done sales. But remember, companies have a lot of money. And it's also not the person's personal, it's the company's money. So they're going to be a little bit different psychologically. I'm a big believer in the B2B space for charging for your product. I just know that free products are not taken as seriously. As someone who tried having a free trial, what I learned is once we got rid of the free trial, we had more conversions on sales. Now everything's going to change depending on kind of who you sell to, et cetera. And maybe if you have a product-led growth strategy, okay, that's fine. But if you have a B2B SaaS product, I am not a huge fan of free trials at all early on because it's much easier to just accept like something's free. You don't commit, who cares? But if you have to get someone's credit card, that behavior of swiping the credit card and signing up for a monthly recurring fee is much more telling than if someone just logs in with their Gmail. So I would recommend you charge. Another thing is don't do free pilots. There are probably going to be like another sales guru or expert who's like, he's wrong, or startup person, he's wrong. We did this and we had a great experience. The reason why I don't like free pilots is the same reason I don't like free trials. The behavior of having someone to sign up for something that costs them money is totally different than someone who's just, okay, send it over, send us the login, we'll start using it and try it. You need to see if someone is willing internally to get that credit card or put you through procurement to try something. If not, it's likely the problem is not that important to solve. That's my take. But then again, if you have like a freemium free trial strategy that's legit, maybe you're an indie hacker, I still wouldn't recommend it because you want to get money. But if you have a really well thought out premium strategy, maybe take what I say with a grain of salt. Pricing's tricky. I mentioned that earlier. Try raising your prices. I learned that when we raise our prices, nothing changed on the conversion rate side at all. I've also learned that a lot of times, like when you raise your prices, you get a little bit more credibility, believe it or not, with buyers. But it's just something to keep in mind. And then you do get anchored. I remember selling a SaaS tool and they would always compare us to another SaaS tool. And they'd be like, well, this costs this much money. It's, yeah, I mean, it does, but we do this differently. And this is why we're different. So you have to keep that in mind. It's just normal to, if you say you're $89 a month, they're going to think, what else can I get for $89 a month? Another thing that is important to know, very simple, but important to know, you want to think about sales as math. So you have a funnel. So at the top of the funnel is like all those leads and prospects. And then you book the meeting with them. That's your discovery call, your intro call. Then you have your demo, and then you have your proposal call, and then they close. At each step of that funnel, you have a conversion rate. And if you can improve the conversion rate at each funnel, your sales go up. And if you can improve the top of the funnel where you get more qualified meetings, your sales goes. This is why activity is important. If you have at the top of your funnel 10 qualified opportunities a month and you double that and nothing changes with your conversion rates, you've just doubled sales. So that's why activity is really important. I have exposure to a lot of different early stage founders through just my personal network, through my business, through some of the work that I've done. And the one thing that I've noticed of the companies that are doing well are the founders and their team spend a minimum amount of time per week on sales and marketing. Companies that don't spend any time on sales and marketing are going to struggle. Obviously, there's exceptions. If you're like the Figma and you're building something that's going to take you X amount of years to get created, that's different. But for most B2B companies, there's a minimum number of activities that you need to do for cold calls, cold emails, content, LinkedIn, whatever it is that you're going to do that's going to build the top of your funnel. So if you feel like sales is struggling for us, ask yourself honestly, like how many hours per week are you dedicating to trying to build the top? Is it 1 hour a day? Is it 2 hours a day? Is it 1 hour a day and you're seeing results, but you do other stuff because that's more important? And also another thing to keep in mind is even if you don't like sales and you have and you're in the B2B space, think of sales also as like customer research and customer insights. That's going to help you build a better product, and you'll be less frustrated when you're building stuff that people don't want to buy than when you go out there, you get rejected and you realize, okay, this customer segment doesn't give a shit. But this customer segment really likes what we're trying to solve. And then you can build a better product. And guess what? That makes your sales and marketing better. It's all kind of one big feedback loop. Also, not to harp on it, why you don't want to go the enterprise route early on, because that feedback loop is going to be so slow. Whereas if it's SMB and mid-market, it's going to be rolling much more quickly. And then some other things. I think this is really important. And if you've made it this far along in this presentation that has gone on for quite a bit of time, thank you. But you need to have a different mindset for new salespeople. So if you're a founder and you're really dedicated to making this work, pay attention to this slide. The first thing is you're going to take a lot of L's. If you're from another country and you don't know what that means, just losses. So you're going to take a lot of losses. You're going to get rejected. People will tell you in your inbox when you send them a cold email, get a life, kill yourself. Don't ever contact me again, you asshole. Believe it or not, especially if you sell to people in IT, people can be really rude. They have bad days. They take it out on you. That's just part of it. The other thing that's going to be harder for a lot of you is you're going to feel like things are going well in your sales process. You're doing everything right. You watch this video, you've got a sales coach maybe, and the deal just doesn't close. You lose to a more established competitor. Until you've gone through that process, you don't understand how demoralizing that is. Just an opinion I have is the founders who deal with rejection really well, whether it's fundraising, going through VCs, whether it's someone who's bootstrapping to make everything work as well as they possibly can, those rejections from customers can be brutal. And if you don't just pick yourself up and wipe the dust off and keep moving forward, you're going to struggle. And it's really important to just know, like, I'm going to get rejected and I'm accepting that. If you want to think about having a deck of cards and they're all face down, you're going to flip over the cards, and every card that's not an ace is a rejection. But if you keep moving forward, eventually, and if you're doing everything right and you're improving your product and you're improving your message and you're adjusting your targeting and you're working on your discovery and you're improving your demo skill, eventually you'll hit an ace. And that ace that you get when you flip over those cards, it's going to make you feel really good. And once you earn those first customers, you're going to start to get momentum. Another thing is nobody cares about you. Maybe you went to a prestigious university. Maybe you went to Harvard. Well, maybe that's a bad example right now. But maybe you've got a great career. You've worked at one of the FANG companies. You were a top Division I athlete. You're just ready to take on being a star. Nobody cares. Believe it or not, your family might not care. Your friends definitely probably don't care. The customers don't care at all. Everyone is inherently selfish and they only care about themselves. And once you understand, that's going to be freeing for you. Because if you can put yourself in their shoes and understand like how I can help them make their life easier, save them time, save them money, solve this problem that they're struggling with, and you become selfless because they're selfish, and it's good that they're selfish. They should be selfish. That's going to make your life easier. And that goes for everything from your outreach to your sales process to how you respond to them. Think about if like they send you an email at any time of the day, like you should be responding immediately to them. This is off topic, but one thing that you can do as an early stage company that's going to be better than any established company is you can provide better customer service. and you can lean into that. If you go through a sales process with two different companies and one company is always responsive, they answer your questions directly. If they email you, because some of these companies, like if you're talking to someone high up, they might email you at like 9 o'clock at night. I closed a deal earlier with a company that did 300 million. I was dealing directly with the CEO. He would email me at 10:30 at night and then I would respond and then he would respond. That had an impact on how our relationship moved forward. And that's something that you can do as a founder that some people just won't do. That's another reason why you can't hire a salesperson early on. They're not going to most likely deliver that level of customer service. And I really just want to go back to, they don't care about you. They don't care about where you went to school. They don't care how smart you think you are. They don't care about the awards you won. They only care what you can do for them. And once you understand that, it's going to make everything easier for you. They're selfish. They're self-centered. They should be. If you send someone a cold email that they never asked for, you better provide a lot of value on that call that they agree to so you don't waste their time. So think about this. What are they going to gain working with you? What losses are you preventing for them if they work with you? How much better will their life be after your product? And if you don't have good answers for those, then don't start. Think about the impact that you can have not only on them, their business, but also them professionally. Is this going to help them get a better job? Are you going to make them a star at their company? So put yourself in their shoes. Think about how you can help them. Another thing to remember is, as I said earlier, your number one competitor is not the startup that just got funded. Your number one competitor is the status quo. So you really have to think about how you're going to approach that. So your number two competitor is noise. Buyers, they're bombarded by salespeople. There are tools that allow you to send 10,000 emails per week. That might change with some Google updates, but they can send 10,000 emails per day. There's just so much noise. There's so many products. If you ever look at those market maps for SaaS tools, there's like a billion. It's impossible to know what all these tools are. They just have too much noise coming to them. There are people that are just trying to do their job. And every day there's still people sometimes calling. Cold calling is not as prevalent anymore, but there's just email after email, LinkedIn message. There's companies that send gifts to their offices. So that's your number two competitor, but you need to be persistent. And then the other thing is, this is something that I found with inexperienced founders. They chase loser opportunities. So your TAM is probably pretty big. And what ends up happening is you talk to a client, you have a call with them, push you off, come back, push you off. And then suddenly this person's in your head and you're like, when are we going to close company X? Or what's going on with company X? Or I need to follow up with them, or I need to write a really good email to them, or I need to send them a message on LinkedIn, or I should send them something to their office, whatever it is. Or I hope I meet them at the trade show. Just don't chase loser opportunities. Once you realize who's a fit for your company and what their behavior is that's most likely to move forward, just get rid of the loser opportunities. You should be in a market that has enough customers for it. Like, just don't focus on them. It's a weird thing. I know I probably have even done it too, so maybe I'm a little bit of a hypocrite. But there's certain prospects that just waste your time. As you get more experience, you'll learn who they are. Focus on winners. Don't chase losers. And then some other sales tips that you may have heard before. If not, they're good to know. Benefits, not features. I've learned working with technical vendors is that they love to talk about how the sausage is made. They want to describe every kind of bell, every whistle, every kind of unique technological improvement that they've made under the hood. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to know how the product works. If you go to buy a car, you're not asking about like how the pistons in the engine work. Nobody cares. Show them what the product can do for them. What is the outcome of using that product? Is there going to be a huge cost savings? Are they going to save a ton of time? Is something going to be done at a much higher level? Is it going to make it so they don't have to hire more people? What is the outcome of this? So benefits, not features. Another thing that I've learned working with inexperienced founders is they don't ask for business. It's weird. It's awkward. You might be uncomfortable. You got to do it. So what I mean by that is if you've had good calls with people and you're getting towards the end of a call, you might want to just ask them straight up for business. So you can say something like, based on what we've discussed today, is there any reason why you wouldn't move forward with X? They're going to give you some feedback. So that goes back to one of the original slides. What's their mindset now? Are they going to move forward? They might be like, yeah. I'm going to tell my boss we're going to sign up for this. Or we're considering a couple other options. We're not really sure. These are our concerns. One weird thing that is just like a thing, maybe it's human nature, maybe it's B2B sales. People will tell you whatever you need to know if you ask them directly. Unfortunately, most people will not tell you what you need to know until you ask them very directly what the answer is to that question. Don't make assumptions. So don't assume things about people. Don't assume things about what they think. Just straight up ask them, and it's going to make your life a lot easier. Take good notes. You're going to have a lot of calls, and they all blend together. You won't be able to remember everything. I can tell you with 100% certainty, like you will lose the details. Take good notes. There's call recording tools you can use to summarize them as well. I'll link it below. If you have a CRM, great, add them to CRM. As an aside, I think there's probably one or two directions you can go with a CRM, which I can maybe link below, but that's a whole nother topic. A free sales tip here for prospecting. When people change jobs, they move into new companies and decision maker roles, so maybe management or senior management, within the first 90 days, they tend to spend more money. And the reason for that is they've been brought in to effectuate some kind of change. If you're a legit hire, you're going to want a budget. If you're in charge of a department, that's a good window for you as a startup to go in to maybe get a conversation started around solving. Calendar your calls for proposals. At the end of calls, please make sure to schedule next steps for the next call. If you don't, you're going to run into an issue where you're just going to get ghosted. And then for pilots. So I did mention this on the previous slide. Pilots need to have expectations for wins. What I mean by that is if you say you improve X metric, you need to be able to track that. Or if there's some sort of KPI that you're solving for, you need to be able to measure that in some way that then triggers contracts. And then finally, for prospecting, getting those meetings, as I mentioned earlier, activity is so important. Activity is really important. Make sure that you are spending enough time prospect. Make sure you're enough time getting your list built. You're sending out emails, you're making calls, you're creating LinkedIn content, sending Twitter DMs, being active on whatever platform's best fit for you. If you do not do this, things are not going to magically come in place. SEO can be good. There's best practices if you have a SaaS tool. I think the only concern with SEO for a lot of startup founders is the length of time it takes to see results. Depends what to do and how competitive it is. Never get off a call without calendaring next steps. I know that I've beaten a dead horse with that one, but if you do not schedule next steps at the end of every call, you're going to get ghosted more. You're going to lose track of your sales process. It's going to take longer than it should. And then another thing to think about is in sales, there's no like magical close. You don't just close a prospect. There's no sales hack that you can do to close a B2B buyer. Maybe if you're selling like B2C over the phone, like some annuity to some senior citizen that's overpriced, you could have some sort of one call close. But if you're actually selling a B2B product to companies where you have sophisticated buyers, there's no one call close usually. So what you want to think of sales is a series of small close. So your first close, they agree to a meeting. Your second close is they have the meeting, they agree to a next for a demo call. The demo call goes well, they agree to a proposal call. The proposal call goes well, they agree to sign the contract after the call you've asked for business. So you have, I don't know what that was, like 4 or 5 steps. Each one that you move is a close. So it's a series of small closes. Once you think of your sales process like that, it's going to be a lot more easy for you to figure out what works, what doesn't. Another thing to consider is you can figure out where people are dropping off in that sales process and what you need to work on. Maybe you do a great job on booking meetings, but you suck at discovery because no one agrees to the next call. Maybe that's a targeting issue. Maybe you need sales coaching, or maybe you get to the demo, but for whatever reason, you can't move things forward. Maybe you don't understand enough how they buy it, or maybe you're doing a pretty okay job at discovery, but you're really bad. Who knows? The next thing is if you provide a great customer service, I mentioned this earlier, a great customer experience, you will run laps around the competition. Companies are so slow to respond to book meetings. They're so slow to give you the information that you need. They don't prepare for calls properly. They don't find information about my company that they could find online. They, ask me and waste our time. They're not providing any value to me at any level. Just provide a great customer experience and you will be in a good spot. It's, again, something easy to say, maybe not as easy to do, but there's no reason not to do. And as your company grows, it establishes a baseline that you guys are great to work. And then I think the last thing is you really have to be persistent and you cannot give up. I know that's probably cliche. I know it's probably not that helpful, or maybe it's helpful. In sales, you can crack being good enough at sales. I know, and maybe someone will say I'm wrong, but I think you can get good enough in sales in about 6 months if you have a little bit of coaching. And when I say good enough, confidently run a sales process where you are closing deals for your product, where there's some sort of fit, where you're solving a problem. Not saying you have product market fit, but where you can run a sales cycle confident. The key to this is being persistent and not giving up. As I mentioned previously on another slide, you're going to get rejected a lot. Some people, they don't have thick enough skin. They're used to always winning in life, whether it's great schools, class president, worked at top companies, always promoted. They've never faced any type of adversity. I think that's also why some people will say, if you have a chip on your shoulder, it'll put chips in your pocket. People who can deal with adversity and are really persistent and they don't give up, they're the ones that tend to see success. Some people will just get lucky and things just go great out of the gate. That's uncommon. Most companies, it's going to be some sort of like up and then down and then up and then down. If you can just keep at it long enough and you take that feedback from the market, you can usually figure something. And then you also have, what is it, like the trough of despair. I think that's where a lot of people who have never tried to build anything and get something to market, that's where it's brutal. Because nobody cares. Nobody cares about what you're building. Nobody cares about you. Maybe you've got a wife who's supportive. She probably doesn't care that much. She just wants you to succeed. But yeah, it can be really lonely building a startup. Be persistent, as persistent as possible. Don't give up. And if you have any questions, I think I'm going to post this on YouTube. Drop them below. I'll try to answer them. If not, you can send me an email. I might answer your questions. If you send me like a really broad question or you ask to pick my brain, I'm not going to answer it. If you ask me something very specific, I will answer it. I will try to answer it if I have time. You can follow me on LinkedIn. If you like and comment my stuff and then you ask me a question, I'll definitely answer your question. If you follow me on Twitter, I'll definitely answer your questions. But yeah, I run a company called Rev Pilots. We connect startups and SMBs, and some even bigger companies with fractional and full-time sales talent. We're expanding because I've learned people want all different types of talent. I've also learned companies like fractional, and then they also really like moving into full-time when it makes sense. And some people just want full-time. And we started with sales talents, everything from SDR to CRO. We also do some sales coaching from time to time with the right fit clients. And yeah, this is pretty long. It's probably going to be close to 90 minutes. If you watched all the way to the end, I appreciate it. I think that you will probably do well in sales. I'll drop some links below. Some common tool questions are like, what tools should I use for prospecting? I think I'll drop all the links below. I got to look. They're going to have affiliate links because I need to make money on this somehow. This took a while to set up. But yeah, there's tools that I use, tools I recommend, and maybe I'll make more videos if there's other topics. I have no idea if this is going to be one of those videos that has 3 likes and no comments after 3 years, or if it's going to be useful, but I think it's useful. Like I said, if you have any questions, shoot me an email, make it a very specific pointed question. I'm not going to answer anything that's like too broad. I'll probably just tell you not specific enough. And then follow me on LinkedIn. I'm going to post more content. One of my goals this year is to create more video content and then also create more kind of sales specific content. And then for Twitter, whenever we post the same content, follow me on Twitter. And yeah, thanks for watching. Good luck with everything. And as I said, feel free to reach out if you have questions or post them below me. I can respond.